Welcome back to the Blindsiders. I'm Ben here with Dylan and Brian to talk about episode 9 of Survivor 47. And big almost blindside that kind of got ruined. It sounded like it was going to be a close vote, maybe a 5-4 vote. I was speculating about halfway through the episode that we might see something crazy like a 4-3-2 if the Tukus couldn't pull in a fifth player. But we ended up by the end of the episode getting an 8-1 blowout vote. Everyone got on board. So, really interesting episode. I think there's a lot to talk about here. I think there's a lot of good stuff in the episode and a lot of not so good stuff, at least from my perspective. If you guys have any like immediate takeaways or things you want to like highlight before we kind of go through it?
Genevieve is now the villain of my life. So I got that going for me. I went from rooting for Genevieve to now I hate her. And they'll be viewed as sexist because she's a woman who makes a big move. Maybe there's something more there. But I come out of this episode more upset than anything else. I don't necessarily think it was a bad episode. I'm more so upset with the obvious votes being taken away, with bad gameplay, with forced moves being played. Seems like we had some of like our least favorite things happen with New Survivor happen during this episode. But like I said, overall, I think it was still a fine episode. I think the past two episodes of the show have definitely been the bottom two comparatively to the rest of the season. But I leave this upset. I hope we see Saul again. I love Saul, and I am left kind of just dealing with the fallout and the ashes of what happened last night.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Dylan, I really like Saul as well. I think he was very well liked generally by the viewers, especially like the more online viewers like ourselves. It just goes to show how quick something can turn in the new era, because I was like, man, Saul's in a good spot. Like he can really make a run.
We talked last week about how the Sierra move benefited Saul the most in our opinion.
Yeah, so unfortunate. I will second that, Dylan, though. I do hope we see him again. I think he could be an interesting player. I'm glad we got him. He was a very like fun archetype, this big brawly guy, also very analytical and strategic and just like very chill and just very likable. So unfortunate, but the game goes on. I'm not as mad at Genevieve. I'm more trying to understand how this benefits her. And hopefully by the end of this episode, we can either be like, oh, this is how it, or we can be like, yeah, I don't know. I still don't know what the benefit to her is. I don't know, Ben, do you have any idea? Like quick reaction on
I've been puzzling over this, and I think the meta for how you win Survivor has kind of significantly changed in the new era. Historically, there has been kind of a through line for like winners games in particular that you can kind of draw, where you can see them planning out like a long-term strategy and then executing upon that. In the new era, like the only winner that you can really kind of like assign that kind of a structure to, I would say, is D. Like maybe Jam Jam, but like Jam Jam is even kind of like played by the seat of his parents, especially like the first half of the merge. So we've seen a lot of winners so far that kind of have been playing round to round and playing like a very like social positioning style game where they're trying to keep themselves like just like under the line of like their threat visibility, while also being more likable and more respectable than the other people that are kind of going deep into the end game. So if we kind of accept that like everybody at this point in the new era is sort of playing that way, and I think that the reason that's happening to a degree is because of these like round-to-round twists that are unpredictable, so many advantages in the game that you can't really control or know about. Like there's just like way more hidden information in the new era than there has been historically in Survivor. And with that in mind, this idea of like, oh, what is Genevieve's long-term plan now after voting out an ally for seemingly no reason other than a combination of pettiness, and she's like pegging him as a threat to her position? And it's like, I think the answer to that is that's the wrong question, and she doesn't have a plan, and I don't think anybody has a plan. Like, I think people have like kind of vague plans of like, maybe Gabe has a vague plan of like, oh, if I sit the final 3 with Carolyn and Sue, then I think I would beat them. Whether or not that's true, we'll see. But I don't think that anybody really has a plan beyond like the next round or two, or like they're prioritizing their strategic decisions based off of their own social positioning and who is kind of threatening that social positioning in like the near future. So from that perspective, I can kind of see where she's coming from, but it's still like really, really sketchy. And I do think that this is probably mortgaging her pre this episode perceived threat level. We even see Kyle in this episode talk about how he doesn't see Genevieve as a strategic agent. And I don't think anybody after this round left in the game can say that anymore. Gabe and Kyle like firmly put this move onto her, onto her plate. So I don't know. We'll see. But that's like the closest I could come to an explanation.
I definitely lean way more towards that this was a petty move. For whatever
she
reason.
Said it outright. Like, it's
whatever reason she felt that she needed to avenge Rome. This does not have the dramatic narrative that Natalie avenging Jeremy did, for sure. It actually, this is kind of like almost like a villain avenging another villain in a way. I don't know. We talk about new villains. I think like Genevieve seemingly has maybe taken up the mantle from Rome. She's not as not as crazy as Rome was, but I think there's a villain everywhere each season, whether we think that they're good villains or not. I think Genevieve was definitely taking that spot where she's like the silent assassin in a way. Part of me wasn't going into this tribal really thinking that Saul was actually going to end up being safe. I thought that there was enough disruption in between that I never really thought that Sue was actually going to be going home. I guess when you watch it kind of like in a sense of like when you're kind of thinking what is actually going to happen in a meta way rather than what they're showing you on the screen. I had always assumed it was just between Saul and Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah.
We always talk about too, challenge threats usually aren't as big of threats anymore in this game as they used to be, but still Kyle's very, very good. I think also you eliminate him, you eliminate the numbers for that tribe also, whether or not they're closely aligned or not. It kind of just made too much sense to go after Kyle, which is where I think the knock on Genevieve comes, is that she got too cute, made a move that she really didn't have to make at this point. She seemingly has a decent relationship with Sue, with Carolyn, enough that I think that they would vote with her again, should she want to blindside Saul. But I come out of this thinking Genevieve has at the least burned 2 votes for herself if she gets to final tribal. I think that I come out of this thinking that Teeny has like absolutely no backbone in this game. I think she's just like fighting to survive at this point and staying on as long as she possibly can. And who knows, maybe that could be the winning arc where we get the final tribal and she says, at one point I was trying to become like the number 2 to like each and every one of you. You just happened to go home that week. I don't know. I think Sam comes out of this a little bit better, even though I think he kind of tucked tail a little bit at the end. And we talked about it. I think Andy comes out of this whole thing somehow looking like the most competent player
Yeah.
out of this week, which is just crazy.
Hard to agree, actually. Hard to agree.
I stand Andy, so that's like music to my ears now. Now that Saul's out, I'm officially all in on Andy. But it's just, I think that's another knock of this episode too. There was just so much bad gameplay. I think a lot of kind of just things that were done that just don't make a whole lot of sense. And that's kind of like, that's all I take away from it, really. In the end, like I said, I think Genevieve clearly, like you said, she's put a target on her back now. This move was solely placed on her, and I think now, if we step back and look at it, I don't know. I don't think she comes out of this necessarily with like new alliance members. I think now she comes out of this where now somehow Genevieve is like a swing vote for the battle that's going to be between Tuku and Gata, right? So I have to like say it's a bad move for her at that point, because I would not be surprised if we're here next week talking about Genevieve going home and we directly relate back to what happened here this week.
Yeah, it will definitely be interesting, and like, you know, shout out all of our fellow Andy heads. You know, we waited long enough. We were finally vindicated for our hope and Andy here. But yeah, I do like wonder if the Tuku like 4 are super fractured to everybody else. And obviously we got like the preview where Sue's like, I hate Kyle so much I wanted to die, or whatever she said. And so maybe that is coming through, but it's like, okay, you know, Tuku was 4 of 10 and now, or 4 of 11. Now they're 4 of 9. Like, you're playing with fire a little bit if you don't address this, you know, somewhat. Gata and Luvu or Lavu rather are taking themselves out, and also legitimately turning on themselves as Tuku keeps sliding by. Something to see, but yeah, I just like, I don't see how this is a great move for Genevieve. And yeah, like you said, Dylan, wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing her out. The only thing that's like, maybe it is, and you know, it doesn't come back to bite her, is the edit didn't seem to be like, you know, implying this was a horrible move. But they could change that later and be like, in retrospect, this was bad, but we needed, you know, this to look good for this episode. So I guess we'll see there.
Do you think it's because it started to like really fall apart before Tribal, that the reason why this really doesn't feel like this whole mastermind move for her? She gets the credit, and obviously she's the one that kind of ignited the flame to get it going. But in the end, you know, at least to me, it definitely seems like this was like another like wet fart move that did get blown up by the chaos. Once again, outlaw live tribals. It definitely seems like if somebody comes back and says, "Hey, you made this move," but it's also this move like almost completely fell apart simply because other people found out about it. That's what also leaves me still very surprised that it ended up paying off, because after like 20 seconds of live tribal, everyone almost somehow unanimously came falling on Saul. That's what I don't get too. I feel like a lot of the new era Survivor, everyone is so afraid to be in that minority vote. Like Teeny and Sam, like eventually you have to stand up for something. Like, it's no secret to everybody else that you were clearly on the fence about this to begin with. And I understand not wanting to go into the next week being the only person or one of only two or three people that voted against the majority, but like there's clearly a majority and there's a minority. I don't get why the minority is so afraid to go against the majority, even when they know they're on the bottom.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dylan. I do wonder if it's like the target just couldn't be agreed upon by this other group, and because of that, it just completely fell apart. Like, I do think there was an opportunity for like a counteroffensive, but they just couldn't get on the same page. Even at Tribal Council, they couldn't agree. Kyle, Sue, and also credit to Sue to sit there with her idol. Like, that was, you know, ballsy. That took a lot of bravery. I don't know if I would have that if I was in her position and like, I knew that there was a chance that it was going to be me, and then everyone's scrambling around, you know.
Did she though? I feel like she might have just assumed that they were targeting Kyle.
You think she just didn't know at all? That could definitely be. I just will have to wait for exit interviews. Hopefully somebody who actually gets those, please ask Sue if she had any, awareness that her game could be in jeopardy here.
I think that's another reason why this vote was so silly, is that because you had Caroline, who openly had no vote, and she brought that up, and you had Sue, who had an idol that she could have played that at no point ever really felt like she was in any real danger. And it turns out in the end, she wasn't, clearly, because they all unanimously went to Saul anyway. From somebody that brought this up outside of Sue and Carolyn, too. I think that's another, Sue has impressed me a lot as a player. I think she's impressed me in the sense that she socially is able to kind of stay likable. Obviously, she's being perceived as a threat to this point where people want to get her out. But even then, when her name's brought up, in the end, people seemingly are underestimating the threat that she is. I think when you talk about older players recently, specifically older women that have played Survivor, I am very, very impressed by Sue being, a whole 45 years old and still being able to play the game this well with a lot of younger people, a game that's much faster paced too. I do think that she deserves credit for what she's done. I do not understand her hatred for Kyle. I feel like that, are we only going off of that time that he told Rome that Sue and Carolyn were like a mother-daughter duo,
Well,
and she took offense
he voted
to that?
for her. He voted for her during the TK vote, I believe, is what.
Yeah.
Why
She never let that go.
Yeah.
No, she can't. It's
Yeah.
over.
I do think that the targeting of Sue here, which we saw originated from Sam, over Kyle, for me it seemed less about Sue in particular as an individual and more about looking at this 2Q4. It's clearly a trio with Kyle as a hanger on, and so if they take out Kyle, it doesn't really destabilize that social structure at all. Yeah. And so you have to take out one of the trio in order to actually, potentially foment some kind of distrust between the Tukus. Maybe you can then pull Kyle in as an ally and really rip that structure apart. And because Gabe is immune, Sue is kind of just the next best option.
Yeah, I think you're right too, because it did seem also, I mean, Sue literally told Genevieve she won't do it unless Gabe approves to do it. So yeah. I think you are right. I guess on the island now that I think you're right that more so it seems like maybe Gabe potentially is leading that 3. I've never really thought of it that way too. That if you get rid of Kyle, he seemingly is part of that 4. He is not committed to that 4. So yeah, that makes sense too. I don't necessarily think that Sue is, I would put Sue if there's a favorite to win this game. I could very well see Sue getting to Final Tribal at this point. I think she has at least Carolyn kind of very, very, very committed to her in an alliance. I can see them to kind of falling their way back into the end because they were underestimated on. But I don't know. I'm kind of I just go back into the end too. That it just seems so foolish not taking Kyle or Sue out in this episode just to weaken that. Even Rachel too. Rachel, I know that she started to get a little social with them, but Saul saved Rachel. Rachel seemingly had really no. She was hesitant. She didn't even want she told Sam. But she didn't want Saul to know that she told Sam. It really didn't seem like she was willing to pay Saul back. And obviously, I'm not saying she should have played her idol for Saul or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. I can still at least appreciate Andy. I think Andy now he's gone from survival mode to predator mode, where he's ready to go in for the kill on that island, but he's smart enough to know that this wasn't the week for him to do that. Sam seemingly would have been on the bottom going into this week. You would have thought so, at least. But I did come out of this episode, like I said earlier, very impressed by Sam. I think Sam is a player that I can respect in the sense that he's going to be willing to fight to the very end to get up there. But I think it just was a little disappointing to see them tuck tail in the end and not vote against it. But like I said, not wanting to clearly paint that target on your back. I do get that. But with someone like Teeny, this is like every single tribal she's been in. I feel like she's been on this side where she likes the person that they're voting on. She wants to keep them, but like she really doesn't put the initiative forward to try to save them.
But yeah, I guess let's talk a little bit about the challenge and the structure of it.
Mm-hmm.
What and I guess the taking votes away, which I hate so much. Worst part of the new era, maybe. But yeah, I guess what do you guys think of like the pairs of I mean, we've done this twist before, but like how do you feel about having pairs going into an immunity challenge?
The first thing I want to mention though, I saw this on some social media site, either Reddit or Blue Sky recently. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I'm Survivor on Blue Sky, and they've done this twist now, or like a variation of this twist 5 times in the new era, where they like kind of start with like X number of people and they whittle it down to like a endurance challenge at the end between a few people. And Saul is now the 5th out of 5 people to be eliminated who was in the final round of the immunity challenge and lost it. So that's kind of an interesting statistic to potentially look at going forward if they continue to do stuff like this. So I don't know. I think the structure of the immunity challenge is fine. I don't really mind doing kind of like different immunity challenges like this. I would probably like mind less if it weren't like the 4th immunity challenge in a row where they've done like some weird format shift to just like a normal challenge. Obviously the big issue I have with it is the losing the vote part, which I'm sure we'll like heavily talk about because I think we all agree it's stupid. And I said last week that like it's very clear that at this point Jeff has just a fetish for people losing their votes. So yeah, but I don't mind the Paris part of it. I don't care. I like is it fair? Maybe not. Probably not. But like I don't particularly care that much about if Survivor is fair. I care about whether like the game is screwed with enough that it affects the television product, and I don't really care about how they decide who wins the challenge.
I honestly I don't care either way. Like I in terms of the duos, I think there's something to be able like to play with someone that you have like a good relationship with, or someone you've gotten close to this person, they're great at challenges, so obviously I'm going to go for them. And Glee for Gabe, that worked out really well. Not necessarily that him and Kyle are super close, but they have been together since day one. And Kyle's obviously was the best challenge player so far this season. The losing the votes, obviously we all hate. I saw that this statistic online. I didn't fact check it. This is the first. We have not had a tribal since Asia was voted out that where someone in there did not have everybody had their votes. So that's cool. What was that, episode 3, 2, whatever that was?
Yeah.
So there's 6 tribals where at least one person did not have the ability to vote. That's not good. It hadn't plagued this season, I think, up until now. But when you sit back and look at the statistics, that's got to be the most ever in a row, where there's at least one player that doesn't have a vote. I hate it. I don't get it. We praise them for all the things that they have changed, starting from 41 on, things that worked and didn't work, and then removing it. For whatever reason, Jeff's got a hard on for taking away people's votes. I don't get it. It seems like something now that's not going to change. It gets worse, obviously. I hate it. I think this challenge could have been a lot of fun without that twist involved at all, because obviously a lot of people were competing to be able to get food. The split up of everybody after the challenge too, I'm not a super fan of. I do think from time to time, I don't mind them. We hate splitting up tribals and all that. I don't mind when they split it up to make things a little bit more convoluted before going into a vote. But in this situation, when we're getting this deep into the game, I think taking away people's votes, splitting up tribals, so you essentially have three different people, three different groups talking before a tribal. It's not the chaos that I think people enjoy. And I know a lot of people don't particularly like the live tribals, and you're basically just asking for a live tribal at that point. So I don't ever want to hear anybody in production or Jeff say that, they're not a big fan of live tribals because they keep doing these things to enable them to happen. Yeah, I hate it. It seems like everybody hates it too. I don't think really anybody particularly likes it.
Yeah, no, agreed. I wrote a whole blog about it. You can check that out. wikieverything.blogspot.com. Hate losing the vote. That's the whole point of the game, is people voting, and it just takes the player's agency away. Yeah, I don't like it, but it's not going to change. So it's hard to like balance that in my mind, because I know Jeff will never ever listen to any criticism or take it seriously. So
except for like his couple of close friends that he does.
Yeah. If Tyler Perry and Mike White could relay this message to Jeff Probst and let him know that this is bad for the game, that'd be great.
I am hearing a lot of rumblings about potentially Mike White in season 50, which that would be fun.
That'd be fun. Why would he do? I mean,
why not?
Well, because he's writing an award-winning show.
Can you picture Mike White playing with the likes of of Andy, Mike White and Andy duo teaming up? That would be Andy would be on season 4 of White Lotus. It'd be great.
It would be interesting to see him interact with
Mike White, Andy, and Q all together in an alliance. That'd be unbelievable.
I mean, it would be great for Survivor if they could get Mike White again, especially now.
I think having the Angelina Mike White duo back again in 50 would be groundbreaking for Survivor.
I think let's put our hopes in Angela coming back more than Mike White. I just can't see why he would do it. His life's great. He doesn't need this.
Walton Goggins, season 3 of White Lotus. I can't wait for that.
Yes, looks great.
Yeah. I mean, it is a 26-day season now, unless they do an extended. We say extended as as opposed to just like more traditionally normal length season for 50. So I don't know. Maybe that will help convince him. What I have seen is that Jeff wanted to like bring Mike White on as like an official production capacity for Survivor. I don't know how real that is.
I mean, that would work. I think that'd be good.
Maybe we can get another new Jeff sighting in White Lotus season 3. That'd be great.
HBO, you could really do it.
Yeah,
Jeff's
game. Have to cover it up with a tray of bacon.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll have to see. Is Jeff down for nudity?
Full frontal nudity, yeah.
Would he do it to get Mike White to come back? That's the real question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Yeah, I guess anything else from this episode? Yeah,
I think I mentioned this in our text. I want to talk about one of the early scenes that we got. This is probably my favorite part of the episode, just because I thought it was like really interestingly edited, where we kind of got like this like season-long overview of Andy and Rachel's kind of relationship story throughout the season, as an overlay of them having the strategic conversation where they were kind of hashing out their history, and then on top of that, also giving each of them confessionals during it to kind of have like this inner monologue thoughts about this discussion they were having. I thought that whole scene was edited really well, and like kind of a unique thing that I've noticed, especially like this season. I think they've done a lot of kind of unique editing, tricks and things.
I agree. I wasn't here last week, but I felt the opposite about the editing last week, though. The editing during like the montage of them eating and stuff,
Mhm.
I didn't particularly care for that. Just because in the sense of the editing, it seems like they were just rushing along things that we otherwise would normally watch. But I agree. Yeah, I thought that was great. Andy and Rachel, it's a real meet cute scenario, when the guy tries to talk to you about his feelings the day you met him at like midnight. It's very cool. But Andy's a changed man. Andy's on his winner's arc. So it's kind of good to see Andy kind of settle old flames with Rachel as he embarks on his winner's journey. But no, I agree. I thought that was edited very well. Where do you guys come out of this episode on Rachel? It seems like we're both like we're jokingly and not jokingly think that Andy comes out of here really, really strong. What are your kind of thoughts on Rachel? Because I also think that Rachel, I don't particularly love her coming out of this episode either.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've been down on Rachel this season, mostly as like a reaction to what seems to be a lot of people online being very high on Rachel, and I don't necessarily see that. And I think it's people like reading the edit and then like trying to like fit that into like gameplay that doesn't actually exist, to like because they think that she's the winner and like they're like trying to like retroactively be like, oh, she's actually like this really good player because I'm reading in the edit that I think she's the winner, when she hasn't really been like a huge driving force strategically, and she's also kind of been like socially outcasted in a lot of votes. I don't know. I think she's probably in one of the better spots she's been in all season right now. Almost like accidentally, I would say. I think that her telling Sam and causing this chaos might incidentally save Genevieve from her own mistakes, because we're going to come out of this where somebody like Teeny is not going to explicitly know that Genevieve was like the person who was driving this vote. It's going to come off more like it was people like Andy and Rachel driving this vote, especially in that live tribal. I'm pretty sure the people who are probably the most vocal about like, no, we're not, we're just going to do Saul, probably were Andy and Rachel. And so because of that, I don't know if Rachel really comes out of this with like relationships that she can really speak to outside of Andy, which is not great. Especially because I think Andy comes out of this in a position, in arguably the best position, and it's why I think that Saul ultimately goes home, because I think Saul going home was good for Andy, and they needed his vote to make it happen, to save Saul. Where he has a one-on-one connection with Genevieve. That Genevieve, after Rome got voted out, decided that she was going to glom onto Andy and basically like kind of make him her new Rome, but without the baggage. He has he restructured or re-strengthened his relationship with Sam. I thought that both Andy and Sam handled that blindside really well, and they seem to have mostly reconciled the differences from the Sierra vote. He spent this episode getting a one-on-one relationship with Rachel and building that back up. And we were seeing in a preview where he's going to try to pick up Teeny, who is now a completely free piece in the board. And so we have a potential 5-person like group if we're going to have a 5 versus the Tukus, where arguably Andy is at like the fulcrum point of that entire 5. That's like you can't ask for a better position. So I don't know. I think it's really, there's a lot to kind of puzzle out of this move and like the ramifications of it.
I have chills after you just laid all that out for Andy. I have literal chills right now.
Look, does that mean he's going to win? I don't know. I'm not 100% sold that he can win a jury vote. I think that he would probably have to put on an incredible speech, really laying out a lot of his decisions being deliberate and being like, this was my journey. Like, I utilized the breakdown on day 1 to kind of set an expectation for my perception, and then I used that perception as a way to deflect. There's like a bunch of arguments he can make in that vein. So Can he get to the end? Maybe. Can he make that argument if he gets there? Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, you touched on it too. That I wanted to quickly bring up also was how well Andy and Sam both kind of handled that. That after I thought that was great. I thought Andy did a wonderful job explaining why he did it and how they can move on forward after that. And I believed Andy too. You know, he said he did not want Sam to go home, even though Sam had been kind of throwing his name out there willy nilly. I did always buy that Sam and Andy were somewhat, friends on that island too. Not as good as friends as Sam and Sierra, but I thought that they were friends. So yeah, I did like that. Man, I really hope Andy wins this season. I think that it'd be an all-time comeback story from a guy losing his mind after the second challenge. Was it the second? It was at the first challenge.
First immunity, yeah.
First immunity challenge to winning it. That'd be pretty sweet. But yeah, you just gave me chills laying out everything Andy's done. I did not watch the trailer for next week, but that's very interesting to hear Andy kind of picking up the scraps. That's kind of what any good warlord does. You find the orphans and you bring them in. You make them your own, make them loyal. So that's good. That's good on Andy. Yeah, I think it sounds like we're all pretty much on the same boat. We're coming out of here. Genevieve not as good as she has been, and Andy kind of continues to climb. Once again, after all these complaints, I'm still very, very excited for the rest of the season. I think we're set up for a very good ending. Still, depending on kind of how everybody plays it out. I'm like begging Teeny to make a big move coming up. I'm begging her to do something. I don't want to see Teeny because I was high on Teeny before. Told you like several weeks ago I thought Teeny was in the best spot to win, and then she literally plunged down immediately after I said that. I would love to see Teeny start making big moves because I think she has the capability. I like Teeny a lot, both as a player and kind of the person we've seen that she is. So I really just want her to I want her to win Teeny, and I want her to be able to just get like very quickly drunk off the champagne based on what we saw after she drank like that beer the first time when she was already feeling herself. So I'm now that Saul's gone, I find myself rooting for Andy and Teeny moving forward, which is why I think I'm overly critical of Teeny at this point. Even though I don't want Brian to have a complete total winner's pick, because I think that Brian, how many years seasons in a row has Brian won? Is it only 2? I feel like it's more.
No, it's 3, right?
3 in a row.
Well, no, this would be 3. This is 3, yeah. Yeah, because they had Jake and then Q and then now Teeny.
So
yeah, we'll see.
No, none of us have had a winner's pick yet since we started the podcast, right?
No.
So that'd be fun.
Brian has gotten the closest and the second closest, though. Mm-hmm. He had Deshaun, who was the second, and then he had Jake, who was third.
Deshaun shouldn't have been second, but he was. So that's all I got, though. That kind of sums up how I feel at the end of this episode.
All right. Well, I've had horrible internet issues this whole time, so I assume the show was good. I wasn't much of a participant, but I hope that it'll be salvageable to edit all the audio together without StreamYard uploads. So yeah, if you didn't hear from me much on this episode, that is why, because I was not really plugged into what was being said. But I think, what was that?
So you got the memo for me and Ben to wear some sort of shade of green today, so that's good.
So yeah, other than that, you all know all the places to follow us. I'm just gonna try to land the plane half blind as best I can. But guys, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you all in the next one.